Hey everyone, welcome back. Make a woman. Obsessed with you using these. 5 forbidden. Nicknames Stoicism, Stoic philosophy. What if I told you that ancient Roman emperors and Greek philosophers discovered relationship principles, so powerful that they're still transforming lives? 2,000 years later, and what if these same principles could help you build the kind of deep, meaningful connections that most people only dream of? Stay with me because in the next 40 minutes, we're going to dive deep into 5 Stoic principles that will completely change how you approach relationships. And I promise you, this isn't about manipulation or tricks. This is about becoming the kind of person that others naturally want to be around. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're exploring something that combines ancient wisdom with modern relationship psychology. If you're new here, we focus on practical philosophy that actually works in real life. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Now, before we dive in, I want to be clear about something. This video isn't about manipulation or mind games. The Stoics were all about integrity, wisdom, and genuine character development. What we're talking about today is how to become genuinely attractive through inner strength and wisdom. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's explore how Stoic philosophy can transform not just your relationships, but your entire approach to life. Chapter 1. The Foundation. What Stoicism really teaches about relationships. Let's start with a story. Picture this. It's 161 AD, and the most powerful man in the world, Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, is writing in his personal journal. But he's not writing about conquests or politics. He's writing about how to be a better person, how to handle difficult relationships, and how to find inner peace. These writings became known as meditations. They contain some of the most profound insights about human relationships ever recorded. But here's what's fascinating. Marcus wasn't writing a self-help book. He was writing notes to himself, trying to figure out how to live a meaningful life. The Stoics understood something that we've forgotten in our modern world. True attractiveness comes from inner strength, not external validation. They called this eudaimonia, human flourishing. When you operate from a place of inner strength and wisdom, you naturally become more attractive to others. Not because you're trying to impress them, but because you're genuinely impressive. The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues that create this inner strength. Wisdom, understanding what truly matters. Courage, facing life's challenges with grace. Justice, treating others with fairness and respect. Temperance, having self-control and balance. I learned this lesson the hard way. Years ago, I was constantly seeking validation from others, especially in romantic relationships. I would change my personality, agree with everything, and basically become a people pleaser. And you know what happened? People found me boring and needy. It wasn't until I discovered Stoic philosophy that I realized I had it completely backward. Instead of trying to be what others wanted, I needed to become someone worth wanting to be around. So with that foundation, let's dive into the 5 specific principles that will transform your relationships. Chapter 2. Principle 1, the power of presence. The first principle comes directly from Marcus Aurelius. Wherever you are, be there totally. This is what I call the power of presence, and it's absolutely magnetic. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah was a client who came to me frustrated because she felt invisible in social situations. She would go to parties, try to be funny, share interesting stories, but people seemed to forget about her the moment she left. The problem wasn't that Sarah was boring. She was actually incredibly interesting. The problem was that she was never fully present. She was always thinking about what to say next, worrying about how she looked, or planning her exit strategy. The Stoics understood that presence is the ultimate gift you can give someone. When you're fully present with another person, you're telling them that they matter more than your phone, your worries, or your to-do list. Here's how to develop Stoic presence. The 5-4-3-2-1 technique. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. This grounds you in the present moment instantly. But why is presence so powerful? Neuroscience shows us that when someone gives us their full attention, it activates the same neural pathways as physical pleasure. We literally feel good when someone is fully present with us. The Stoics called this prosoche, paying attention. Epictetus taught that attention is the most valuable currency we possess. When you give someone your complete attention, you're giving them something more valuable than money or gifts. Now let's talk about what presence is not. It's not just making eye contact. It's not agreeing with everything someone says. It's not being passive or silent. True presence is active engagement with the present moment. Back to Sarah's story. After learning about Stoic presence, she started practicing it in small ways. Instead of planning her next comment during conversations, she focused entirely on understanding what the other person was saying. Instead of checking her phone during dates, she left it in her purse. The transformation was remarkable. Within a month, she noticed that people started seeking her out at social events. Men began asking her out more frequently. Why? Because she had become a rare person in our distracted world, someone who was genuinely present. Here's your homework for this principle. For the next week, practice the 5-4-3-2-1 technique before every social interaction. Put your phone away during conversations, completely away. When someone is talking to you, focus on understanding, not responding. Practice reflective listening. Repeat back what you heard before adding your own thoughts. Presence is the foundation, but it's just the beginning. The second principle takes this even deeper. Chapter 3. Principle 2. Emotional independence. Epictetus, who went from slave to one of the most respected philosophers in Rome, taught us something profound. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. This brings us to our second principle, emotional independence. And this might be the most counterintuitive relationship advice you'll ever hear. Meet Tom. Tom was what you might call a nice guy. He would do anything for the women he was interested in. He'd drop everything to help them, agree with all their opinions, and basically reorganize his entire life around their needs. And despite all this effort, his relationships always ended the same way, with women telling him he was too nice, or that they didn't feel a spark. Tom's problem wasn't that he was too nice. His problem was that he was emotionally dependent. Emotional independence doesn't mean being cold or distant. It means having a strong sense of self that isn't dependent on others, approval, or affection. The Stoics called this autarkeia, self-sufficiency. Here's the paradox that Tom discovered. The more emotionally independent you become, the more attractive you become to others. Why? Because desperation repels, but confidence attracts. From a psychological perspective, emotional independence signals several attractive qualities. Self-respect. You value yourself enough not to compromise your core values. Stability. You're not an emotional roller coaster that others have to manage. Strength. You can handle life's challenges without falling apart. Authenticity. You're being genuine, not performing for approval. I experienced this transformation myself. I used to be what my friends called a relationship chameleon. I'd become whoever I thought my partner wanted me to be. Country music fan? Suddenly I loved country music. Vegetarian? I'd give up meat. Political views? I'd mirror theirs exactly. The relationships built on this foundation were disasters. Not because the women were bad people, but because they were dating a mirage, not the real me. The Stoics taught that we should focus on what we can control, our thoughts, actions, and responses, and let go of what we can't control, other people's opinions, feelings, and decisions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself." Here's how to develop emotional independence. The circle of control exercise. Draw 3 circles. Inner circle. Things you can completely control, your thoughts, actions, words. Middle circle. Things you can influence but not control, your relationships, your reputation. Outer circle. Things you cannot control, other people's feelings, The weather, the past. Focus 80% of your energy on the inner circle, 20% on the middle circle, and 0% on the outer circle. Now let's clear up some misconceptions about emotional independence. It doesn't mean being selfish or inconsiderate. It doesn't mean never compromise or adapt. It doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It doesn't mean not caring about others. It means having a strong enough sense of self that you can care about others without losing yourself. Back to Tom's story. After learning about emotional independence, he started making changes. He stopped canceling his plans whenever a woman wanted to see him. He started expressing his genuine opinions even when they differed from hers. He pursued his own interests and goals, regardless of whether she was interested. He learned to be comfortable with disagreement and even conflict. The result? Within 6 months, Tom was in a healthy, passionate relationship with someone who appreciated him for who he actually was. Your homework for this principle: complete the circle of control exercise. Identify one area where you've been seeking external validation. Set a personal boundary and stick to it for 1 week. Practice saying no to requests that don't align with your values or goals. Chapter 4, Principle 3, The Art of Stoic Communication. Seneca, the Roman statesman and philosopher, once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." This wisdom leads us to our third principle: the art of Stoic communication. Picture this. You're having a conversation with someone you're attracted to. They make a comment that could be interpreted as criticism. What's your immediate reaction? Most people either get defensive or start overthinking. What did they mean by that? Are they rejecting me? Should I argue back? The Stoic response is completely different. Stoic communication is based on 3 pillars. 1, clarity over cleverness. 2, understanding over being understood. 3, wisdom over winning. Let me share a story about Maria. Maria was brilliant, PhD in literature, incredibly well-read, sharp wit, but her relationships always fizzled out after a few months. Men would tell her she was intimidating or too intense. The problem wasn't her intelligence. The problem was how she communicated it. She used her knowledge as a weapon rather than a gift. The first pillar is clarity over cleverness. The Stoics valued truth and understanding above all else. They weren't interested in winning arguments or sounding impressive. They were interested in genuine communication. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In communication terms, this means not trying to outsmart or outmaneuver others. Here's how to apply this. Before speaking, ask yourself, will this help or hurt understanding? Replace complex words with simple ones. Focus on one idea per sentence. Check for understanding. Does that make sense? Or what's your take on that? The second pillar is understanding over being understood. This is revolutionary in our social media age where everyone is fighting to be heard. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Try this exercise in your next conversation. Make it your goal to truly understand the other person's perspective before sharing your own. Ask questions like, "What's that experience like for you? How did that make you feel? What's the most important part of this for you?" Back to Maria's story. She started applying these principles. Instead of correcting people's literary references, she asked them what they loved about reading. Instead of showing off her knowledge, she shared stories that related to their experiences. Instead of debating every point, she sought to understand different perspectives. The change in her relationships was dramatic. Men started describing her as fascinating and easy to talk to instead of intimidating. The third pillar is wisdom over winning. The Stoics understood that being right isn't the same as being wise. Seneca wrote, "The willing destiny guides them. The unwilling destiny drags them." In communication, this means choosing when to engage and when to let go. Before engaging in any disagreement, ask yourself, 1, is this worth discussing? 2, can I approach this with curiosity rather than certainty? 3, am I trying to understand or to win? 4, will this strengthen or weaken our relationship? When someone says something that triggers you, Practice the Stoic pause. 1. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what would a wise person do here? 3. Choose your response based on your values, not your emotions. Let's talk about what Stoic communication is not. It's not being passive or agreeable. It's not avoiding difficult conversations. It's not suppressing your personality. It's not being emotionally flat. It's about being intentional with your words and focused on meaningful connection. Your homework. Fawn, practice the 2-1 listening ratio. Listen twice. As much as you speak. 2, before responding in conversations, pause and ask, what would help this person feel understood? 3, replace one argument this week with a genuine question. 4, practice the Stoic pause technique in one challenging conversation. Chapter 5, Principle 4, Authentic Vulnerability. This might surprise you, but the Stoics, these supposedly emotionless philosophers, actually understood vulnerability better than most modern relationship experts. They just approached it very differently. Let me tell you about Alex. Alex was the guy who seemed to have it all together. Good job, fit, confident, never seemed bothered by anything. But his relationships were surface level. Women would say he was perfect on paper, but they never felt a real connection. Alex's problem wasn't that he was too perfect. His problem was that he was performing perfection rather than being genuinely human. Stoic vulnerability isn't about emotional dumping or trauma bonding. It's about what I call authentic vulnerability, sharing your genuine self, including your struggles, in a way that creates connection rather than burden. Here's the Stoic paradox. The stronger you become internally, the more you can afford to be vulnerable externally. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is literally a 2,000-year-old vulnerability document, a powerful emperor, sharing his deepest fears and struggles. Authentic vulnerability has 3 characteristics. 1, it's purposeful, not random. 2, it's about growth, not victimhood. 3, it's balanced with strength, not overwhelmed by weakness. For example, I've been dealing with some anxiety about my career lately. Struggle. It's taught me that I was too attached to other people's definitions of success. Lesson. I'm learning to define success for myself, which feels both scary and liberating. Growth. The Stoics were all about timing. There's a difference between appropriate vulnerability and emotional dumping. Appropriate vulnerability shares experiences that create connection, includes lessons learned or growth achieved, invites understanding, not fixing, builds trust gradually. Emotional dumping shares problems without context or purpose, focuses on the problem, not the growth, expects others to fix or solve, overwhelms with too much too soon. Back to Alex's story. He started practicing authentic vulnerability. Instead of saying, I'm fine when stressed, he'd say, I'm working through some challenges at work, but I'm learning a lot about myself in the process. Instead of hiding his past struggles, he'd share them as growth stories. Instead of pretending to be perfect, he'd acknowledge his ongoing journey of self-improvement. The change was remarkable. Women started describing him as real and deep, instead of perfect but distant. When sharing vulnerable experiences, use the classic story arc. 1, set up the situation you were in. 2, conflict, the challenge you faced. 3, resolution, how you grew or what you learned. This makes your vulnerability inspiring rather than just sad. Let's talk about vulnerability mistakes. Sharing too much too soon, using vulnerability as a manipulation tactic, focusing on problems without solutions, making everything about your struggles, using vulnerability to avoid responsibility. Remember, the Stoics were big on boundaries. You can be vulnerable while still maintaining your dignity and self-respect. You don't have to share everything with everyone. Your homework. 1, identify one area where you've been performing instead of being authentic. 2, practice the Stoic sharing formula with one trusted person. 3, share a growth story from your past using the story arc structure. 4, notice when others are being vulnerable with you and practice receiving it with grace. Chapter 6, Principle 5, Leading with Purpose. We come to our final principle, and it's the one that ties everything together, leading with purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "In the morning when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present. I am rising to the work of a human being." Let me tell you about David. David was successful by most measures, good income, nice apartment, social life. But he felt empty. He was going through the motions of life without any real direction. His relationships reflected this. They were fun but shallow, exciting but ultimately meaningless. David's problem wasn't that he was unsuccessful. His problem was that he was successful without purpose. Leading with purpose means organizing your life around something bigger than yourself. The Stoics called this the common good, contributing to something that matters beyond your immediate desires. Purpose is magnetic. When you meet someone who is genuinely passionate about something meaningful, you can feel it. There's an energy, a direction, a sense of aliveness that's incredibly attractive. Purpose doesn't have to be grandiose. It doesn't have to be saving the world or curing diseases. It just has to be genuine and meaningful to you. It could be helping others grow and develop, creating beauty in the world, solving problems that matter, building something lasting, serving your community. My own journey with purpose started when I realized that my career success felt hollow. I was making good money, but I wasn't making a difference. I started exploring what really mattered to me. I discovered that I was passionate about helping people develop inner strength and wisdom. This led me to study philosophy, psychology, and personal development. Eventually, it led me to create this content. Once I started leading with purpose, everything changed. Not just my career, but my relationships too. I started attracting people who shared my values and vision. Conversations became deeper and more meaningful. Here's how to discover your purpose. The 3 questions exercise. 1. What problems do you see in the world that genuinely bother you? 2. What activities make you lose track of time? 3. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? The intersection of these 3 areas is often where your purpose lies. Once you identify your purpose, the Stoics taught that you should align your daily actions with it. This is what they called living according to nature, living in harmony with your highest values. Back to David's story. Through the 3 questions exercise, he discovered that he was passionate about environmental conservation. He started small, volunteering on weekends, changing his consumption habits, learning about sustainability. As he aligned his life with this purpose, he became more attractive to others, not because he was preaching about the environment, but because he had direction and passion. He eventually met his partner at a conservation event, someone who shared his values and vision. When you lead with purpose, you create what the Stoics called virtue in action. You become someone who contributes rather than just consumes. This naturally attracts others who want to be part of something meaningful. Each morning ask yourself, how can I serve my purpose today? What one action can I take that aligns with my values? How can I contribute to something bigger than myself? Let's talk about purpose mistakes. Thinking your purpose has to be your job. Comparing your purpose to others. Waiting for perfect clarity before taking action. Using purpose as a way to feel superior. Abandoning purpose when it gets difficult. The Stoics taught that purpose should be pursued with dedication, but without attachment to outcomes. You control your effort and commitment, but not the results. Your final homework? 1. Complete the 3 questions exercise. 2. Identify one way to align your current life with your purpose. 3. Take one small action this week that serves something bigger than yourself. 4. Share your purpose with someone close to you. Let's quickly recap the 5 Stoic principles that will transform your relationships. 1. The power of presence. Being fully engaged in the present moment. 2. Emotional. Independence, having a strong sense of self that doesn't depend on others' approval. 3. The art of Stoic communication. Clarity over cleverness. Understanding over being understood. 4. Authentic vulnerability, sharing. Your genuine self in a way that creates connection. 5. Leading with purpose. Organizing your life around something meaningful. Remember, these aren't pickup techniques or manipulation tactics. They're principles for becoming a genuinely attractive person, someone others naturally want to be around because you've developed inner strength and wisdom. The journey of applying these principles has transformed not just my relationships, but my entire life. I'm not perfect. I still struggle with these concepts sometimes. But the difference is that now I have a framework for growth. Here's my challenge for you. Pick one of these principles and commit to practicing it for the next 30 days. Don't try to master all 5 at once. Focus on one, build that habit, then move to the next. If this video has been helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content on practical philosophy and personal development. In the comments, I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 principles resonated most with you? Which one do you think will be most challenging to implement? Your engagement helps me create better content for this community. Also, if you're serious about implementing these principles, consider joining our Discord community, where we discuss these concepts in more depth and support each other's growth. The link is in the description. Remember what Marcus Aurelius wrote? You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Power to transform your relationships starts with transforming yourself. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep growing, keep learning, and keep living according to your highest values.